Today we talked about evaluating all of our trig functions, and we looked at some where I gave you an ordered pair, so an x and a y, and you had to find r, and then I gave you some where I gave you an equation, and you had to get your r based off that. There are certain angles that are going to come up a lot in trig. So today we're looking at the first of these angles. So if I think about an xy axis, you notice the angles that I gave you are 0, which would be here, 90, 180, 270, and 360. Where is that? Back at 0. It's the same thing. They're coterminal. So what was the name for these angles that lie on an axis? Right. These are the quadrantal angles. So we are going to learn the values of the trig functions at these quadrantal angles. To do that, we have to pick a point on this angle. Now we talked yesterday about how as long as you pick a point on the side, we could all pick something different, but the ratios turn out to be the same. So let's just pick a nice point. So this would be 0, 0. So if I move over, I could say my x is 1. What's the y value if you're on this line?
0.
Okay. You might want to sketch this picture even on the back of your table, or if you're going to tape it in your notes, just draw this picture in your notes, because this is going to come up all the time. And if you forget these values, you can draw yourself a quick sketch in order to figure it out. We also need what from this? We have x, we have y, we need r. How do we get r?
Square root of x squared plus y squared.
Alright, so square root of 1 squared plus 0 squared. So we get square root of 1 plus 0 is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1. So in other words, if I'm talking about the 0 degrees, my x is 1, my y is 0, and my r is 1. So if we think about our definitions, what is the definition of sine? Using x, y, and r. What did we say?
Y divided by r.
So at 0, my y is 0, r is 1, so I have 0 over 1, which is, so sine of 0 is 0. Cosine. Cosine is x divided by r. So at 0 degrees, my x is 1, my r is 1, and 1 divided by 1 is 1. So cosine of 0 degrees is 1. Definition of tangent?
X, no, y divided by x. Sorry.
Y divided by x. So looking at my point, I have 0 divided by 1, which is 0. To get cotangent, what do we do?
That would be y divided by x.
Tangent's y divided by x.
Wait, I wrote what I said earlier, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So cotangent is x over y. They're reciprocals. So if my x is 1 and my y is 0, what do we get when we do 1 divided by 0? Right. Usually I write out the word undefined. The no solution symbol also works. It's just more common in trig to write the word. Secant is a reciprocal of? Right, reciprocal cosine, so r divided by x. R is 1, x is 1, so 1 divided by 1 is 1. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, so r divided by y, so 1 divided by 0 is undefined. All right. Does everybody understand how I got those values? At 90 degrees. So if I go to my picture, 90 degrees is here. What is my x value at that point?
0.
My y would be any positive number, right? Because we went up, so you could do 1, 2, 3. You could do fractions. I think the nicest option is just 1. Then if we find our r, we get the square root of 0 squared plus 1 squared, which is 1. So r turns out to be 1 again. So using our definition. So y divided by r, that's 1 divided by 1 is 1. So the sine of 90 degrees equals 1. Cosine x divided by r, so 0 divided by 1 is 0. Tangent y divided by x, so 1 divided by 0, undefined. Cotangent x divided by y, so 0 divided by 1 is 0. Secant r divided by x, so 1 over 0 is undefined. Cosecant r divided by y, so 1 divided by 1 equals 1. So if I give you one of these quadrantal angles, we can figure out the values of all the trig functions. We're going to do one more together, and then I'm going to have you guys try to finish the table. So at 180, what would be my x value here? Negative 1. My y?
0.
So if you find r, negative 1 squared plus 0 squared. So negative 1 squared is 1, plus 0 is 1, and the square root of 1 is still 1. My radius is still 1 here. So y divided by r, my y is 0, r is 1, and we get 0 again. Cosine of 180 degrees, x divided by r, so negative 1 over 1 is negative 1. Tangent of 180 degrees, so y divided by x, so 0 divided by negative 1 is 0. Cotangent, just the reciprocal of tangent, negative 1 over 0 is undefined. Secant, reciprocal of cosine, 1 over negative 1 is negative 1. Cosecant, reciprocal of sine, 1 over 0 is undefined. I want you guys to do the last 2 rows. So at 270, it's down here, what would be our x value? 0. The y would be, and what's your r turn out to be? Right. R is just the distance from the center, the vertex, out to your angle. So on all of these, our radius is always 1. So for 270, sine y over r, negative 1 over 1 is negative 1. Cosine 0 over 1 is 0. Tangent, negative 1 over 0 is undefined. Cotangent, x over y, so 0 over negative 1 is 0. Secant, reciprocal of cosine, 1 over 0 is undefined. And cosecant, reciprocal of sine, so 1 over negative 1 is negative 1. Alright, at 360. 360 is the exact same thing as what? 0. It's coterminal. So it's going to be all the same values we got when we did the 0. So for sine, 0 divided by 1 is 0. Cosine 1 over 1 is 1. Tangent 0 divided by 1 is 0. Cotangent 1 over 0, undefined. Secant 1 over 1 is 1. Cosecant 1 over 0, undefined. Alright, and soon, in the next few sections, we will add, I guess maybe the next section, we'll add 3 more angles to this. We'll do 30, 45, and 60 degrees. Those are going to be our common ones. We are going to work on learning these values. It's not so much that I expect you to, at this point, just have this table memorized and know exactly what everything is. What I expect of you right now is that you could draw this little picture and figure out any one of these things. So if I just said tangent of 270 degrees, you could say, okay, well at 270, this would be my point. Tangent is y over x, so negative 1 over 0, tangent of 270 is undefined. There is a section on your homework tonight that just asks you a bunch of these questions. Now, I am fully aware that I have just helped you fill out this table. And so if you're staring at this table, you could do all those questions in just a minute or two, okay? But on the test or the quiz, are you going to have a table filled out like this? No, you're going to have to figure out these values on your own. So I'm going to give you class time to work today because I don't want you just copying the answer over. I want you to draw the little picture and use it to figure out the answers, and then just use the table to double check yourself. Okay, so use it as practice, because when we get to a test or quiz, you're going to have to be able to find those values on your own. What if I asked you, like, the sine of, about 540 degrees? How would you do that? I'll wait.
Subtract 360.
Yes. That's more than 360. So if we subtract our 360 to get a coterminal angle, what do we get?
180.
And so how I would expect you to do that is think, okay, 180 is here, my x is negative 1, my y is 0, r is always 1, sine is y over r, so my answer is 0. Okay, so that's your thought process there. If I said the cosine of negative 270 degrees, what would you do?
Add 360.
And we get cosine of,
90.
so then you think, okay, 90 is right here. My x is 0, my y is 1, r is always 1. Cosine x over r, so we get 0. So that's how I want you to work through those problems. And I can give you things bigger or smaller, like 540 to negative 270, and you just add or subtract your 360 to get something doable. All right. Any questions there? So yesterday I gave you the first half of the problems in this section. I'm going to give you the rest of them now, and you've got the rest of class to work on it. So here are the rest of the problems, and then all of this section 1.3 homework is due tomorrow. If you get stuck on anything, you can ask Cameron or myself for help. And of course there is the answer key. Same section.